When you think about the Legend of Zelda series, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it Link in the iconic Master Sword paired with his floppy hat and green tunic? Maybe it's one of the many amazing stories about pure evil being defeated by the force of courage. Your mind may even jump to some of the most amazing music in all of gaming, and that's a hill I'm willing to die on. However, the first thing you think of probably isn't the game's combat. Well, maybe, I don't know, I'm not you. But that's not the point. The point is that the combat in these games is often quite simple, at least at a glance. If you take a look under the metaphorical hood, you'll likely be surprised at how amazing these seemingly simple systems can be. So let's talk about it. If you've ever played a Zelda game, odds are you know that once you get a sword, you'll be able to slash your way through the majority of enemies that come your way with the simple press of a button. While this is often true, even dating back all the way to the first entry in the series in 1986, even back then it wasn't quite that simple. Of course, all the items you gather on your journey can really help spice things up. But even just looking back at the iterations of the sword you can gather, there's a fun mechanic you probably know that's been referenced to death for nearly 40 years now with the sword beam. When Link has full health and goes to stab an Octorok, this glimmering blade will fly across the screen. This tiny cluster of pixels is just the start of what we'll be getting into in this video, but it's a necessary point to make, so bear with me. We instantly see the combat evolve in the game's immediate sequel in the following year, in 1987's Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. This game, while it's not always heralded for much, one of the highlights of this Metroidvania-esque Zelda title is its swordplay. Of course, the simple stab returns, as does the sword beam, but now there's a handful of abilities that advance the combat miles past its predecessor. Now we can jump and crouch, would you look at that? In addition to fighting at different elevations, now the inclusion of the jumping ability in this game has also allowed Miyamoto & Co. to implement two of Link's more memorable moves in the form of the up slash and the down slash that are both featured in Link's underrated Super Smash Bros. Moveset. This leads to Zelda 2 having some of the most engaging, difficult, and unique combat in the series. Following the impressive yet divisive system introduced in Adventure of Link, our hero seemingly took a step back in the next entry, but at the same time, A Link to the Past has some really amazing combat. The biggest difference here is the exchange of the good old stabby stabby for the even better old slashy slashy. This seemingly small change makes combat so much more comfortable than the first game could have ever dreamt of being. This seemingly small change makes the combat so much more comfortable than the first game could have ever dreamt of being. Other than that though, there's really not much more we could ask for in terms of 2D Zelda combat. Oh, also there's the Pegasus booth. These things are sweet! Additionally, the inclusion of Rock's Feather is a refreshing change in Link's Awakening in the Oracles games, but my eyes really opened up to how good 2D Zelda combat could be when Capcom took the reins on the GBA in the Minish Cap. If you haven't played the Minish Cap yet, wait until you finish this video and go play it. It is criminally underrated on the landscape of Zelda games, if you ask me. Now, this game was released after the series' famous jump into 3D, and we'll get back to that. Just hold your horses. Jeez. The first thing I absolutely need to point out is that you can swing your blade as fast as your fingers will let you, and it leads to a really fun-looking violent motion with some really fun sound effects. I mean, just look at this! Not only do we have that amazing whatever you want to call that, but there's also the introduction of Tiger Scrolls. These little tricks refresh the combat in a way I didn't think was possible from a top-down perspective. Swiftblade here, along with his relatives and ancestors, I think. Anyways, they teach us all sorts of incredible abilities that make this game more fun to move around and fight in than any other 2D Zelda could have dreamt of beforehand. The first key to what makes combat in this game so great, in my opinion, is that you can roll in this game. You know, just like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and even the Wind Waker. When you pair this rolling with the aptly named roll attack, the outcome is spectacular. Just look at this thing. So cool. This move, alongside the down thrust, the great spin, and some others, can lead to some of the most incredible combat 2D Zelda is capable as far as my feeble brain can comprehend. But let's be real for a second, you don't care about that, and I personally am only interested if a Z-axis is involved. The Zelda series' first escapade into 3D in Ocarina of Time was one of the first 3D combat systems, if not the first 3D combat system dealing with swordplay. While this would probably lead you to believe that it's a very simple combat system, it's actually far from it. I could go on and on about how amazing the target system is, and it was revolutionary, and it's still used in games to this day, yada yada yada, but that's all boring and it's been said a billion times now. All I want to say is, oh my god, quick spins are so cool! Seriously, I didn't even know this was a thing until like 15 years after I'd first played a Zelda game, and I'm addicted. Seriously, is there a rehab center that specializes in quick spin addiction? Because I think I need that address. Anyways, outside of targeting, quick spins, and the introduction of jump slashes and a few other more simplistic staples of 3D Link's swordsmanship moveset, Ocarina of Time and in turn Majora's Mask simply laid the groundwork for what's to come with Zelda combat. And when the Zelda series made the jump onto the GameCube, Link's moves took a big step too. In 2002, we got The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say this, I'm definitely biased. I've spent too much time trying to perfect my gameplay in this game, doing randomizers to speedrunning and just screwing around all the time. Over the thousands of hours I've spent with this game, I've really grown to appreciate how amazing the combat system feels to control once you've had a little practice. I mean, just look at this right here. Of course, you've got your typical slashes and stabs, but we've also got this amazing display I'm putting on, not to brag. Okay, yes, to brag. Well, that sounded arrogant, but nonetheless, you've got to admit this looks pretty cool. I mean, just look at this Calidimo's quick kill I have to record. Ugh. So good. I mean, all this really is just side hops and mid-air jump slashes paired with quick spins, but it looks so cool! The fact that you can buffer a quick spin with a jump slash, meaning that you can do the quick spin input in mid-air to perform the action the second you land, is something that the developers had absolutely no reason to include in this game, but the fact that they did leads me to believe that they wanted to make the combat system so much more involved than just holding L and pressing B like we see in most of the games to date. So while absolutely none of this is necessary, the fact that it's all included brings me so much joy and I absolutely love it. The next 3D entry in the series takes it a step farther with Twilight Princess. Holding L and pressing B is all that you need to know to make your way through this game, but if you take a step towards the game's hidden skills, you'll quickly realize that much like the Wind Waker, this version of Link has so much more to offer. Not even mentioning the same side hop jump slashes and stuff that I love there, but we also have the introduction of 8 learnable combat abilities, 7 of which are not required in any capacity. Is just so cool. I mean, just look at the Helm Splitter and the Backslice. These 2 skills alone make me so happy. At this point when I was looking into these combat systems, I started to have some questions. Why are these awesome systems in place if they don't have any intention of players ever having to use them? I'm pretty sure most people don't even know what Wind Waker's Link is really capable of, and I'm trying to think, why is that? Now this is where I'm going to put on my speculation cap. I'm just 100% guessing, but I think that the Zelda developers wanted to be able to make some big and intricate combat system, but they can't make anything that would be too much more thinking than holding L and pressing B, because if it was too complex, the game would be too difficult to consume, and in case you don't know this, a ton of people play The Legend of Zelda. More than just the sweaty gamers, you've also got 5-year-olds and grandfathers. I mean, think about Zelda compared to the Souls franchise. Those games are infamously tough as nails, and that's a big turnoff for a lot of people. Meanwhile, everyone from my 5-year-old cousin to my year-old father plays Zelda games. Odds are they don't want some big, tough-as-nails, complex fighting system, they just want to be able to experience a good old Zelda adventure. And I must say, Nintendo has perfected this aspect of their games and never fails to deliver, hence the series has always done incredibly well. And if I had to guess, that's why the combat probably isn't the first thing you think of when you think of Zelda. It's not that kind of game. It never has been, and odds are it never will be. They have to put the story and the adventure first, and I personally wouldn't want it any other way. But just because they have their focuses in other areas, that doesn't mean that the developers don't want to make these awesome fighting systems. They still want to make Link one of the most badass sword fighters ever, so they've made him one, whether it's meant to be shown off or not. And I must say, it's really cool that they've been able to do that. I'll also gladly point out that in the more recent entries, particularly Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and presumably Tears of the Kingdom, that they've been allowed to bring these abilities a lot closer to the forefront of Zelda games while still not making them the focus of the game. In Skyward Sword, the implementation of motion controls, and more specifically gyro, allows for some very involved and unique combat compared to the predecessors, although it doesn't always feel great, and Breath of the Wild's flurry rushes and parries are just as satisfying to me as a Calidimo's quick kill or destroying a Darknuts armor with a couple of backslices and helm splitters. And I'm not willing to argue that. But let me know what you think down in those comments. Is Link the best sword fighter ever? Is Zelda combat too simple? Should Nintendo continue to make combat subtly this good? I don't know, but I'd love to hear what you think. Anyways, this video has been an absolute disaster, but if you watched it or listened to it all the way through, thanks! I'd appreciate it more if you'd like and subscribe, wink wink. Also check out my Twitter and Patreon if you want, they're linked down below. But once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.